100, 200, $300,000. It's kind of like, wait a minute, like, why does this boat not have this technology? And you're the only one that has it. So that's, pretty great.
When people think of Seakeepers, they think of this new technology.
Mhm. Welcome to the Boaters Podcast. Today we are hanging out with Andrew, who is originally from New Jersey, but is now in South Florida with Seakeeper and Seakeeper Ride. And just to start the show off, we kind of like to ask a fun question that kind of lets people get to know you a little bit better. So, Andrew, if you would, what was your first boat and what was your worst experience with that boat?
Yeah. How you doing, Aaron? Yeah, my first boat, 14-foot John boat with a 1967 18 horsepower. And it's hard to think of a worst experience because they were mostly all good memories, the best memories of my life. I guess one that stands out is, when I first got the boat, of course, my parents restricted how far I should take it. And of course, I pushed those boundaries. But one time I remember pushing into a little lake to do some crabbing and, caught the wrong end of the tide and the tide went out and I was surrounded by mud and stuck there for 3 or 4 hours. And of course, my parents and everyone else on my block was on their boats looking for me and I was past where I was supposed to be. So I had to come back kind of the ride of shame down my canal as everyone was standing outside full of mud, the boat and myself. And, then once I get home, also get in trouble for taking the boat out. So I would say that was a pretty poor day. But other than that, they were just all fantastic experiences. And I hope more people get to enjoy boating at a young age as I did.
Yeah, that's awesome. How young were you at that point? I mean, so you're
Yeah, I was
like,
third, fourth grade, so 9, 10 years old.
oh wow, wow.
Yeah, I
So
started
so
early.
you got in early. Like a lot of people don't have that ability to kind of get in, being 9, 10, be able to sneak off with the John boat and get stuck down the river. That's
Yeah,
funny.
and they've changed the laws a little bit that restrict some of that, that age and size boat. But yeah, again, they were the best memories for sure.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So what got you into the marine industry? How did that come about um to get into, like, being full-time working in the marine industry?
I had to pay for gas for my boat, but it was 13 years old. I started working at our local marina, Monroe's Marina, and they were family friends. And I started there, and it was just fantastic. As a first job to blend passion with kind of first work and what is now into a long lasting kind of profession. And yeah, learned everything from sweeping the floors on all through and worked my way, through high school and even the summers through college at that marina. And so, I always dreamed of finding a job that would keep me on the water and in the industry. And, following college, I lived in Asia for a year as I worked, and I planned to come back into the States and go to business school. And I came back into the States in Viking, which I had known very well because the town I grew up in is where Vikings are manufactured and been watching them run up and down the rivers for as long as I can remember. They were just getting in and pushing their international business and were really looking for someone that had a passion and understanding of the marine space as well as a desire to travel. And so I joined Viking, shortly after college there. And yes, that was my first professional job. And then, of course, to Seakeeper. So near every job I've had has been in within.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Because that's, yeah, like, that's, you really don't have any other, like, a lot of people you talk to them, oh, well, I worked, a restaurant when I was a teenager, then I worked in construction or something, and then you from like 9, 10 years old have been into the boating scene basically.
Well, and I have had some bad job experiences too that make me appreciate being in the Marine. I sorted FedEx packages at college. I was a telemarketer for True Green Comlon
Oh,
at college. So I've worked those other jobs, and yeah, just of course makes me love what I do that much more.
yeah, yeah, it really makes you appreciate it. What did I like a Viking? So what did you do with Viking there? How'd that?
So they were building out an international dealer network.
Okay.
So I came on at that time, and so I kind of did three things. One, built and managed the international dealer network that we put together. And of course, we didn't have dealers in every region of the world. So where we didn't, we worked and sold factory direct,
Mm,
which was an awesome experience for me because I got to develop, one-on-one relationships with these end users that love the boat, love being on the water, love fishing,
yeah.
And then I would also project manage as those boats are, semi-custom, mostly custom. I'd understand what the customer wants and then watch the boat down the production line to make sure it got built to their specs. So I did that for 5 or 6 years, and yeah, it was a dream job. It really was in every way. Still believe Viking is the best builder, and just glad that I got my start with such a great company.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you. I think Viking is like prestige is what if I was to think of a word when I think of a Viking, I would say prestige is probably one of the words that I would use. Then but okay, so then you kind of transferred over to Seakeeper and got started with them. It's kind of funny like Seakeeper a lot of people because now it's so prevalent like you go to boat shows, you see the stickers everywhere. So it's kind of like you kind of see it a lot now, the brand, the name Seakeeper, where I think a lot of people think it's like a newer company, but it's not. I mean, it's actually I think I saw you started with them in 2008. So, it's getting up there. I mean, it's a long time. Could you walk us through kind of some of that history with them?
Yeah, so I start real quick with kind of how I ended up at Seakeeper. So 2008, as I said, Viking was a dream job. I never thought I'd leave,
Mhm.
and young guy, just bought my first house. 2008 was coming, obviously difficult times, and I just was like, wow, I don't even have a resume. I might as well put one together in case. And I knew Seakeeper because they had used the Viking for the early prototype. And we had a conversation, and right around that time, my boss had called me in and said, "Just so you know, there's going to be some layoffs, but
Mm.
your job's safe. You're a lifer." And right, I thought of Viking the same, like I was there for life. And I called Seakeeper and was just like, "Hey, listen, like I think it's really cool what you were doing. I hadn't yet felt the product, but I understood the concept.
Mhm.
But one, this is my dream job. I'm not going to leave fish to find fish, especially in 2008."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they said, "Well, while you're at the next boat show, why don't you try the product just because it will help you in the industry?" And I said, "Okay." And I remember hitting the button for the first time, and this huge smile across my face, the same smile I have today when I hit the button. It is wow. And understood there that this would be a transformation. It wouldn't be easy, but that for sure I wanted to be a part of it. And so leaving that business that was 40 years old with 1,000 employees to go knock on a door of a startup in
Mhm.
2008 was a wild decision. But yeah, from there I believed in the product, believed in the company, and started out, like I said, a few of us in a house in Southern Maryland. And with that transformational technology, one customer after builder, we started tipping, and what was a wild, crazy idea that I'm not sure anyone else in the world really believed in, has become minimum expectation. It's
Mhm.
the air conditioning in cars. That was once a luxury option, and today you don't go and ask if it has air conditioning when it's on the car lot. You just expect it,
Yeah.
and that's what people have come to expect with Seakeeper.
Yeah, that's funny. It is interesting how you kind of like people who call it like a lifestyle creep or something where you kind of like an amenity comes to the point where it's like, yeah, you expect it. You want that there. Which is the gyro technology is definitely an amenity on a lot of boats and it's interesting how Seakeeper Ride has changed a lot of that, which we'll get into that in a little bit. Before though, because you've had that opportunity to be in the industry for so long. I think that there is kind of like right now the boating industry is kind of in a spot where I don't see as many new people or younger people getting into it in such bigger like groups that I think I did when I was, getting into it. What being from somebody because you went from running off with the John boat to then becoming the CEO of a big company in the marine space. What would you suggest someone do if they're younger and wanted to get into the industry?
Well, there's a lot of years in between there, but uh, I think for me, and I hope we put a lot of time, in our life where we work, and I think it's important that you follow your
Yeah.
passion, do something you believe in, with a company you believe in, with people you believe in. So I would say, if you are passionate about boating, get into the industry, but don't just pick a job with any company just to get in. It's important you find the right company that
Mhm.
aligns with you, your values, your culture. Because I often see really great people that make poor career choices, just for need of a job or just because they want to get it, that, in some ways you end up being defined by that. So I'd say follow your passion, get in, but make sure that you're getting in with a company and a product that you believe in.
Yeah.
And, I think overall this is general, whether it's in marine or anywhere, it's just work hard, ethic, drive. And,
Mm-hmm.
I would say most important, like, you make a lot of decisions at work, right? You don't want to have to go to your boss for everyone, and make the decision as if you own the company. What would you want your employee to do? And I think if you do that, you often make decisions that align, hopefully, with the owner, the right decisions, and you work hard and drive, and you get to do your passion mixed with your profession, and yeah, not sure you then call it work. It's what you do, not work.
Yeah, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life, I guess is the old
Yeah.
adage that people say. So Seakeeper, I find it funny because I'm trying to think of a link here on like whenever people talk about stabilization and other things, like Seakeepers like what they say now. It's like become a noun where what is it? Hot tubs, everybody calls them jacuzzis, which jacuzzi is like a brand, but if you say, hey, let's go get in the hot tub, hey, let's go get in the jacuzzi, it's like a noun, but it's a brand name. And I think Seakeeper has really captured that, uh, being anything that people talk about stabilization or gyros, they use Seakeeper as, hey, does that boat have a Seakeeper? Or, they don't say, does it have a gyro? Which I find pretty interesting. How did you guys intend to do that, or that just kind of came about because you're pretty much like the king of the space?
Well, yeah, the Kleenex, it's probably what I'm most proud of. Is we have amazing products, but to me, most importantly, we built an amazing brand.
Hmm.
But this is something that we worked really hard to build a category. As I said before, we were probably the only ones that believed in it in the world, especially 2008.
Hmm. Yeah.
And it's a lot easier to come out with a better mousetrap than it is to come out with a transformational category and create a new
Yeah.
category, because everything that you are doing is new. And you take a lot of risk in doing it. It's a lot of cost in doing it. And ultimately, if you're successful and you create that, you should own the category.
Hmm.
So for us, that was important early on, that we were a Seakeeper. It wasn't a gyro, it was a Seakeeper.
Yeah.
And you see that today. So it's part of, it was our intent. But I think it also goes with the awesome brand that we built. And, it's been fantastic, for us. I think it makes it difficult for future competitors, made it difficult for Kelsey, because when you thought of Seakeeper, right, it was like this brand. Now all of a sudden we have Seakeeper Ride. But at the end of the day, like I said, it is something we pushed really hard and something that we're really proud of.
So what about gyro? Let's talk about the gyros for a little bit, or let's just call it Seakeeper. So really, what we're talking about counteracting the motion of a boat, like the natural motion of a boat in the water. It kind of like, I mean, the boat's just getting tossed about realistically in the water.
Yeah,
So could you kind of explain a little bit into the physics of it? How does it counter all these things? Because I know you've got like a lot of people, you talk about the yaw and the roll and the pitch and like all these things. Could you go into that kind of like how it works in a way?
yeah, for sure. And probably good to say, when people think of Seakeepers, right, they think of this new technology,
Hmm.
and the way that we are doing it, right, is new in every single way. But really, we took a technology that had languished. It was over 100 years old, which was gyroscopes on really large transliners. These were 13 foot in diameter, 100 tons, but they were very effective at reducing roll motions. But they were too big, too heavy, and required too much power.
Yeah.
And what we did is say, all right, we have to make it smaller, we have to make it lighter, less power, and to do all that, you have to spin it faster. And the first breakthrough was putting it inside a vacuum encapsulation. So
Hmm.
we have this vacuum encapsulation inside a flywheel spinning at up to approximately 10,000 RPM.
Wow.
And when the boat rolls, the natural physics, it tilts fore and aft. In doing so, it's producing a gyroscopic torque to port and starboard to counter that boat roll.
Hmm.
And I think the easiest way to think about it, if you did, kind of think back to high school and science class, you would spin a bicycle wheel and you'd move the wheel and it would resist. So same concept, but we're just doing it, of course, on a much bigger scale at much higher speeds to create a lot more torque.
Mm-hmm. I was gonna ask about the go back to the power consumption, and like you said, like that's kind of the, yeah, one, it's too big, and then two, it requires so much power, kind of like what electric has right now, with the issue of everybody, a lot of companies wanting to go to the electrification of the engines. But like, you could make a 500 horsepower electric outboard, but the amount of batteries and power that you're going to need to power that is not realistic. So how did you get, so what is the power consumption of that? Like, if you run the Seakeeper, how much power do you really need to have in order to get, because I mean 10,000 on RPM, that's a fast spinning flywheel.
Well, it varies a lot, but I'll say just putting in the vacuum encapsulation, we cut power by, more than two-thirds.
Mm,
And you would never be able to spin at the speeds that we do, without having that vacuum encapsulation. But just because we're talking about 10,000 RPM, if you look at our Seakeeper 10 and a half, it's about a 450-pound flywheel.
mm,
And we spin it at those speeds, but because it's in a vacuum with about the power of a hairdryer.
wow.
When you get down into our smaller DC products, we're about the power of your stereo.
Wow.
So again, minimal consumption because of that vacuum encapsulation, which really enables us to get on, right. The larger boats, they do have AC power on board, but as you get into the DC power, it's limited. Everything is fighting for that battery capacity,
Hmm.
as you said, and important that we get the power down as low as possible to make sure that we can make gyros practical on every single boat.
Yeah, that is interesting, because if it's only, does that equate to like a lengthened boat? Like, let's say, because obviously, a 45 footer is going to need a lot more than, a 21. So for someone that's got, let's say, a 23 footer, it's only going to need that small. And then also, does it spin at that same rate consistently, or based on sea conditions, does it like, is it variable? Is it just one consistent speed?
Well, you'd spin slower if you'd like, but yeah, for us we have two speed settings. One's a lower power setting, but
Mm,
we spin it at that speed consistently to generate that performance.
right.
So again, we have a range of products that take us from 27 feet up to about 150 feet if you add multiple products at the top end of it. Um, but yeah, again, the drive was to get power as low as possible, and it's kind of coupled with right power as low as possible. You want to make it as small as possible. You want to make it as light as possible, and all of that is driven by the RPM. Right, the faster gyroscopic torque, right, comes from the angular momentum, which comes from the weight of the flywheel, the distribution of weight in relation to the axis. So you can make the flywheel bigger
Mm,
or spinning it faster, right? Those things are problematic on boats if you make it bigger or you make it heavier. So we choose to spin it faster because it is the most important thing to get the best performance in a minimal volume, power, etc.
mm. That's interesting. Like, I'm just trying to wrap my mind around it as you're explaining it to me. So I'm kind of like, well, how does that work? Well, how does that work? Kind of like sparking my interest. But
But don't feel bad because I say the same thing. People ask how it works, right? You get into the physics and you're like, psh. And it's like, I'm not really sure, but what I know is it works and it works really, really well.
yeah,
So hit this button and feel it.
yeah, because I'm like, you got to dumb it down, like, bring it to a third grade level for me, like. But that's interesting. So you really, you get down to the smaller ones. I think you said 10. So I'm guessing that's a 10-inch flywheel inside there,
It's about 14-inch
14-inch.
flywheel.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then it using as much power as a like the stereo. So really, if you had like a 23 or 25 footer, you could put the Seakeeper on there, and it not be this massive draw on your battery. You would is I'm guessing it takes more power as it's spinning up, but then once you
That's
get
right.
to that speed, then the draw goes very minimal.
That's right. It cuts the power in half or more than half once you're at speed.
Hmm.
So most people spool them up, while they're at dock, on shore power. And, then when you're off and running, you also have your alternator output as you motor your way out. But It's minimal power, as I said. You look at like a 26, 27 foot boat, you typically have dual engines, two starting batteries, and two house batteries.
Mm-hmm.
And, we're installing Seakeeper with two house batteries that are powering the gyro as well as all of the other components on board. And typically, you could easily run it for, 2 to 3 hours just on those house batteries without even having to start up the
Oh
engines.
wow, wow. Now, and you said this is all like that's all 12-volt stuff. Is there? Do you have different variants like a 24, 36, 48, or is it all basically 12-volt or generator power?
So yeah, it's 12, and then once you get up to our larger product, 4.5, then we have all AC power.
Let's move on to well, actually, why stabilization? What what got you guys so motivated about like stopping, mobilization? Because I think about people, like you were saying earlier about picking something that you really love and you really like, and what I guess what kind of got you so excited about stabilization and
Well, I think boat motion, which you think of, right? That's what people love to be at, but it's the single biggest drawback of being on a boat. The at rest roll motions, where more than 60% of the world gets seasick.
mm-hmm,
And
yeah,
then underway, you have roll, pitch, and yaw motions, which leads to the pounding. And, ultimately, what you want on a boat is to be able to enjoy the journey,
mm-hmm,
right? So getting there with a comfortable ride as well as the destination.
yeah,
And 40% of the people that buy boats, within 5 years, they sell it and never buy a boat again. And I very much believe that that is because of the drawback of these boat motions, specifically the unwanted motions at rest and underway.
mm-hmm.
And our product does the best in the world at addressing those, gets more people into boating and keeps them boating.
Yeah, yeah, that I've got that same experience. Where I know a lot of people that will, get into boating and let's say they, go fishing and I've seen people where they'll fish for years. They'll be on the boat, be on the water for a few years and have no issues, but then all of a sudden start getting seasick out of the middle of nowhere. It's kind of like, well, you've been taking the same trip for 5 years and now all of a sudden you're getting seasick. So I can definitely attest to knowing people that do have that issue. So yeah, I guess that would be a way because yeah, as soon as you get seasick, it's kind of like I mean the trip's over. It's like that's not enjoyable for you. It's not enjoyable for anybody that's on the boat. Of course, you've always got the captain that's kind of like, well, one more. Like we're gonna stay here for a little bit longer, and yet somebody's over here sick. Like
Well, and that's once you get to the destination, right?
yeah.
So the journey, to me, in what Seakeeper Ride addresses, the pitch, roll, and yaw motions while you're underway.
Hmm.
And again, the journey should be an enjoyable experience, and it's often not. It's also hanging on for your life, and I can't wait to get where I'm going.
Hmm.
And no,
Yeah.
like that's not what boating should be.
Mm-mm.
And Seakeeper Ride, as we started with the gyro of the at rest roll and slower speed roll motions, the ride product, takes the pitch, roll, and yaw and reduces those motions while underway.
Mm.
So both products coupled to give, what is the ultimate boating experience.
So just for those that don't may not understand that, like, what is pitch, yaw, and roll?
So you have pitch, which is this way, so the fore aft. You have roll motions, the port starboard, and yaw motions, so turning motion.
Mm,
So those are the three motions most problematic in boating. And our product, specifically the ride product, is addressing all three of those while the boat's running.
hmm.
And if you've been on a boat, right, it's not only the pitch
Yeah,
motion. What comes with that is the pounding, the slap, the waves. You get wet. Like it's all a part of that experience that is a downer. At least was until Seakeeper Ride came on the scene, and now we can make that enjoyable.
yeah, yeah. Because you kind of as you're going through the water, yeah, you're going over the waves like this, but then you hit one that jerks you left, jerks you right, or like rolls you over, and so that's kind of how the two would work together. Really, is um, the gyro is when you get there, like you were saying, and then the ride is what gets you there. So you're kind of like full package comfort, really.
And talking about the Ride product a bit, because it's the newer product and right newer to the world, just to explain a bit, what that is and how it works. So the first ever vessel attitude control system, and eliminating 70% again of the pitch, roll, and yaw. So they're mounted on the boat's transom below the waterline. And for us, breakthroughs in technology in the actuator and the control and sensing package
Mm,
enable us to move that at a speed, with sophistication that can address those dynamic motions. So we're doing 1,000 calculations every second
wow.
to determine the boat's position in all three axes and what we should do and how we should create lift at the transom to address those motions dynamically. So I think everyone that listens to this podcast, I imagine, has some experience with trim tabs,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you hit a button and you can understand how creating that lift at the transom can change the angle of the boat, port starboard, or the running angle fore aft, right? But you do that statically, right? And there are some systems that have come out over the last 10 years that say, hey, rather than you having to touch the buttons, we could help make those static adjustments for you. But there has been nothing that actually dynamically is providing stabilization. So reducing the pitch, roll, yaw rates, and angles, which the Seakeeper Ride product does. And yeah, it's one of those things. I said, I started this that I hit the button the first time, on the gyro, and it was like, holy shit, wow, on my face. And it's that with the ride system, the same while you're underway, and it's one of those things. It's hard for people to understand and wrap their head around until they feel it.
Mm-hmm.
Because people think of, oh, I understand how trim tabs work. I
Yeah.
understand that maybe if someone could touch it, it's like, no, we're moving at 100 times a second from our 1,000 calculations. No one in the world could move it 100 times, let alone have the sophistication.
Yeah, yeah, and especially if you're, talking about like hydraulic trim tabs where it's like you hit the button and you're like waiting for the thing to go down, and then when it gets there, now all of a sudden the conditions are different, so now you gotta bring it back up. So yeah, whereas you're talking about making 1,000 calculations per second. What
Yeah, and I think in the simplest way that I think about it, you have these devices that have been that are trim devices.
mhm,
I really think of them trim, and what ours is a complete underway stabilization system. And I think that really defines, yeah, they're both on the transom. Yeah, they both create lift. When I'm saying kind of you have interceptors, you have tabs, but only Ride and our controllers are providing dynamic underway stabilization. That's really in a category of its own.
mhm. Well, you've created another category. I mean, it wasn't enough to create one, you gotta do two.
You got to keep having fun.
That's funny. What now does it run off of a GPS, or is it solely based on like how does it work? Like is it,
Yep.
do you need a GPS signal, or is it like calculating based on the boat's motion? I'm how does that
So we use some of the GPS inputs, but it's really the complexity is in the sensing package that is all Seakeeper IP that we had to build from the ground up,
mm,
right? That is making those 1,000 calculations about that boat's
right.
position and all access. And there's nothing on the market today that can do that. We had to build in the sophistication of the most advanced sensing systems in the world that are on modern aircraft,
Yeah.
but get it into a marine package that can get it on a product that ultimately at a price point that we can get into entry level boating. And that's just not avail. And an amazing team that kind of worked hard and diligently to say, not only do we know where the bar is for performance, but we have to get there to make sure this product is accessible for everyone.
Mhm.
And it was a critical decision because we could have came out with this product a lot easier if we targeted big boats,
Yeah.
right? There's more willingness to pay. There's more brand seekeeper understanding there. But our vision, 71% of our plants covered. We want everyone to make the most of it, and it was important that we can build that and bring that wow technology down to entry level boating.
Yeah, that's really good because it's yeah, I think about trim tabs and interceptors and everything else, and it is. I mean, it seems like it's quicker. Like, how long have you guys been developing the Seakeeper Ride? Because I think I first saw it in maybe like a couple years ago, maybe 22, maybe maybe a little bit longer than that. How long have you been working on it?
Yeah, it's a loaded question. Interesting answer. The product as you see today, which kind of I just the first true underway stabilization system,
Oh
2019.
wow.
But we had been working for 10 years prior to that, and had come up with two products that were very, very good active trim systems.
Mm,
So I said before, right, define this category. You have tabs, interceptors, trim systems, some of them active. Then you have true underway stabilization that is only Seakeeper Ride. We had active trim systems that I believe were better than anything on the market, even better than anything on the market today. But that's not what we were after. We didn't want a better mousetrap.
right.
We had set that bar with Seakeeper that people, when they hit the button, you want the smile on the face, they want the wow. And that's what we wanted with Ride. So we shelved those developments and said, not until we have the technology capable to produce true stabilization underway will we launch something.
Mm-hmm.
And those breakthroughs happened, around 2019, 2020. And really, that's where we got to work. And of course, there was COVID kind of along the
Oh yeah.
way, and several other things that we've had to overcome. But launched in 2022, is the product we always dreamed of, and in many ways better than we dreamed. And you see that by the mass adoption we're seeing in the OEM world
Mm-hmm.
as well as the aftermarket world.
Yeah, I honestly, I mean, do you know how many it might be a question that you don't really want to talk about, but when I go to a boat show and I'm thinking like how many boats have the ride system on it, it's kind of like what percentage is that? I mean, to me it's almost like this is like 50% of these boats got Seakeeper rides now. Like so you really were able um to do that, to put it out there for everybody at a price point where brand new boat, boom, here's the thing, and it's coming with this, like you said, the air conditioning feature that will probably take over the market because it is on everything. Can you
Sure.
want to talk about that or
We're roughly 150 models today where Seakeeper Ride is standard, and this is going to accelerate. And I think the point behind it is when you think of a boat, there's so many brands, and they're all using the same components,
mm-hmm.
right? In terms of their packaging, some different ways, some better ways. But at the end of the day, the one thing that you can differentiate one brand from the other if you're selling it is the ride,
Yeah.
right? You've all heard, oh, our boats are the best ride. But at the end of the day, like today, anyone who's gotten on a boat with Seakeeper Ride, I don't care how great your hull is. If it doesn't have Seakeeper Ride,
Mm-hmm.
it is not a good riding boat when you compare it to the boats that have Seakeeper Ride.
Yeah.
And ultimately, if you're an OEM, right, you don't want a customer going to a boat show and taking a boat out with Seakeeper Ride and taking your boat out without.
Mm-hmm.
They are going to come off of that trial, right, not understanding how much of it was Seakeeper Ride, how much of it was just the boat,
Right.
but saying, wow, this boat pitched and rolled and yawed 70% less than the other
Yeah.
one. That's not a hard decision to make. And ultimately, right, ride is important. We said it's important on the journey, and it's why all these boat builders are jumping on board to give their customers the best possible experience they can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I didn't even think about it like that because it is. You think about new boaters, like someone that's coming into the industry, and also when you backtrack and look at this on like a massive scale opposed to like you look at it today and you're like, oh, there's a lot of old boaters that have been boating for a long time. So somebody that's been boating for 20 years, they get on a boat, they're used to the way a boat rides to the water. But if
Yeah.
you've been on a couple boats, but now you're looking at boats and you go to a boat show and you go out on this boat and it doesn't have Seakeeper Ride, and then the next one you do, you're like, whoa, that boat, insert brand, whatever, doesn't matter what brand boat it is, because the ride is going to be so completely different that, like, I didn't even think about that. That is true that just getting people on the boat to experience it will completely change perception on, yeah, the way people how should a boat perform in the water? I guess you're basically altering the perception on how should a boat perform in the water when everybody's used to how a physical boat currently performs in the water compared to, well, we have the technology to make it perform like this. That's
And it's like your anti-lock brakes, right? Part of the development was the pitch roll yaw stabilization that we were after, but also make it intuitive automatic. And you go on the boat, you turn the key,
Mm-hmm.
you don't know, it's just on, right? And it's just doing what it does.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the other part. It's fully automatic and super intuitive, And I like, kind of to your point. For me, the best demos. It's great when you get people. I would say maybe equal, but you get people that have been boating their whole life and they think they know what the system can do, or I've been playing with tabs, and then they hit it and it's like, wow, I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I think equally rewarding is when you get someone who's not been on a boat. Some people that we hired, we have to have world class controls engineers that come from, like, say, maybe the automotive space that don't have boating.
Mm-hmm.
And you get out in the boat and they're like, wait a second, this boat is $500,000. And it's like rolling, pitching on, you hit the button and you're just like, wait, like, I don't, they can't even wrap their head around
Yeah.
the idea
Yeah.
that, like, a boat can ride like this and that not every boat in the world doesn't already have this,
Mm-hmm.
because who would want to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to run around and be pitching, rolling, and yawing all over?
Oh, 100%.
So yeah, it's great to get people that are not experienced boaters as well, and see their face.
Yeah, because you could easily see that being like an easy, like that's an easy thing compared to. Because I do want to ask about price in a minute, because I mean that's what everybody really cares about. It's like what's it cost? Like that's what everybody wants to know. But before we get there, I want to. I just wanted to say that like thinking about it, that is an easy thing. You think about the way people are spending money. I think in Miami this year, just at the Miami Boat Show, when I did the averages, the average boat was in between 25 to 30 feet and averaging about $300,000. So it's kind of like, if I'm going to spend $300,000, like, and this is available, you're right. Like, who's not going to put that on the boat when it's like you're spending, that's a lot of money. I mean, you're spending a lot of money. If
Yeah,
you're spending, even if you're spending 100 grand, if you're spending, you know, 100, 200, $300,000, it's kind of like, wait a minute, like, why does this boat not have this technology? And you're the only one that has it. So that's, pretty great. Um, I was trying to think of my next subject where I wanted to go with that one, and it was the length. That's where I wanted to go. Like, how small of a boat do you put this on? Like, I mean, obviously, if you got a John boat, 13-foot John boat, you probably don't want you probably don't need the Seakeeper Ride, but like if you got like a 16-foot flats boat, or like what are your links kind of like? Do you see that as?
yeah. So I'd say right now we're down to 18, 19, 20 feet, and it's a cost issue, not a product performance issue.
Mm-hmm.
And our intent, as I said, is to impact everyone, and we will take it smaller. And you mentioned the 13-foot John boat, and I want to get there. People's first experience, I don't care what size, I want them to have a wow experience. And it's like, they may not venture offshore, but the beautiful thing about our product when we designed it is we wanted it for every type of boat in every condition,
Wow.
right? So you may not be running offshore, but right, you're running and you have people moving around the boat. Oh, wait, you have a passing wake that you pound and the boat rolls. And, so I think the product today is applicable to every type of boat and performance, and in some ways more important on smaller boats because of the motions that come with them,
Yeah.
whether they're offshore or inshore.
Yeah, you get tossed
So
around a
yeah,
lot
we
more.
will keep pushing to get our product to a point that we can get it on every length of boat, down to the smallest boat there are.
Yeah, that's interesting because I mean, I'm the cheap guy that will go out. Like, if I'm on the water, I'm happy. I'm good to be on the water. I don't really care. I'm like you said, that old guy that, I've been boating for 20 years. Back in my day type stuff. But yeah, I mean, that would be, it's because a small boat does get tossed around a lot more, and yeah, it does. So then let's talk about the price there. Like, kind of walk us through the pricing to that. How, obviously, as it gets bigger, it gets more expensive. How does that look as far as the pricing goes?
So our product, the 450 millimeter, which is our smallest product today, that goes up to about 26 feet, is $4,500.
Really?
And we go up to approximately 40 feet today, and the product approximately, I think it's $17,500. And you look at it, right, and for the dollars that you were talking before, you take a 25, 26-foot boat that is $200,000, and you're talking about $4,500, a couple percent to make it performs 70%
Mm-hmm.
better. I think, of course, right, you could say I'm biased, I should be, but that's the best value proposition there is in boating today. And, the other thing we did, is it's one of those, you hit the button, it's like this wow experience. And then you ask people to try to define it. Like, how would you explain it? And often it's hard to do. But the most common answer we get live or in the survey we did was, my boat immediately feels like it's 5 foot bigger. And you think of what it costs to get a boat that's 5 foot bigger, right? And a lot of times people are only getting that larger boat, not because they're fishing with more friends, but right, it rides better. They think they can take it out in
Mm-hmm.
more varying conditions. Well, all of a sudden, right, you have a 25 that runs as good or better than a 30, or a 30 to 35. So you think about what it would cost you to go length, and the more fuel you burn and
Oh,
everything
oh
else,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
now you can get that with Ride, adding it onto the platform.
Yeah. I was noticing on average when you went up 5 feet on a boat, it almost doubled in the average cost of the boat. So to me, I think about it because depending on who you are, where you boat, that kind of stuff. Like if you boat, up north or you're on rivers, stuff like that, and you're not burning a lot of fuel, you're not, you know, spending a lot of money, going out. But then there's also people that spend $10,000 a month just in fuel, go to the Bahamas every weekend. So, there's different levels to it. But like you said, if I've got a 21 footer and I'm thinking about buying a 23 or a 25 for that exact reason, so that way I can go out on maybe a little bit rougher day, or when I'm out there, the weather conditions change at the drop of a hat. So instantly things get choppy and nasty. And then, in a 21 footer, it's kind of like, oh, that's, kind of questionable. But most boats are designed like, they float. They're designed to float and they're designed to go through the water. So now if you spend $4,500 and now the boat feels like a 23 or 25, and you can handle the water conditions because you are changing, you're counteracting, like you said, the roll, the pitch, the all, like, um it is. I don't think that's that expensive to me. I mean, maybe I'm biased too, and I don't, I don't have anything I don't have a hat in the ring, I guess you would say. But to me, I think for $4,500, what you get in the performance, because you can basically take a boat. I'm not gonna say any brands that don't have a really good riding hull. You know what I'm saying? Like there's some boats out there where you get on them, you're like, people pay money for this, like, and
I think I kind of hit on this before, but you tried it in the most simple. If you're shopping for $150,000 boat,
mm-hmm,
and there's two boats, and one is $4,500 more, but it rides 70% better than the other, like 70%, who is going to buy the other? And ultimately that's kind of how I think. It's like, and you look at boats today, they all want to define themselves by the ride, but the fact is, it's really minuscule change, the ride from one boat to the other,
yeah,
right? One's a little better at this, one's a little better. But I mean, to 70% better, of course you would pay
yeah,
$4,500 more to have a boat that's 70% better. And that's what you're seeing. And that's why you're seeing these boat builders, right, that aren't just saying, hey, let's make this a luxury option and let people make that choice. It's like, no, this is a standard product. We don't want someone ever experiencing our boat without it,
mm-hmm.
which is why it's standard.
Well, you also put into, if you think about it, like, think about the money that people put into other things, like the stereo. Obviously the boat doesn't go as fast when the radio's not working, but people put $10,000 in, an $800 head unit. You got $1,000 amp. You got four speakers at $600 a pop. You got a 12-inch subwoofer for $800. It's like you just put all that money in there, and for the same amount, if not less, you can actually change the functionality and performance of the vessel. So, I mean, yeah, I think
And
that's,
put simply, you can enjoy it.
yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah,
simply at
yeah.
the simple as, like, you buy this and our products allow you to enjoy it, and right, that is priceless.
Yeah, I agree. Now, okay, so let's talk about the kind of the, let's call it the accessibility, or the, because we're talking about new boats a lot. We're talking about if you're buying a boat, if you're spending 150 grand, the $4,500, that kind of stuff. But what about people that already have a boat? Like, what's it take to install the system? Is there calibration to it? Is it kind of plug and play? Could like, you know, like me on a Saturday, I could go out to a boat, and if I wanted to put trim tabs on the boat, I could put trim tabs on in my driveway.
Yeah.
How technical, how advanced is the insulation? Like, you think about repowers, like my boat's getting older, my engine's getting whooped out. Opposed to buying a new boat, you just repower with a new engine. Is this something that's kind of like that repower where you could just add the package to the boat? Is it DIY friendly? Is it
So, roughly 50% of our business today is aftermarket. And we talked about how many OEM models to give you an idea, right, of how quickly this is being adopted in the aftermarket world as well. And if you can install a set of trim tabs, you can install the ride system.
okay?
And we have people doing it yourself. We still recommend and would like to see our dealers do it. Ultimately, we know it's getting done right.
Mhm.
But it was a major part of our development. You look at products, specifically ours and what it's doing. I don't want to say it's easy, but you can customize a product for a given platform or that day, right? Which takes a lot of commissioning. And the hard part is making it variable and adaptable to every boat, every heading, every sea state, every speed. And that part of it ultimately also got us to a point where you have a product that out of the box just works. You have zero customization or commissioning, and that enables end users to do it and install it themselves should they wish. But it also enables our dealers to do it very efficiently. Boat builders, right? A boat builder doesn't want to build the boat and then go have to take it to the water to test drive and customize every single one, especially on the smaller side of the spectrum. And it's like, no, this product just works out of the box.
Mhm.
It's smart. It's always adapting and providing the absolute best performance. So it's a major part of the development, as well as making sure that you make it easy to fit right on the transom and the other components that go along with it.
Yeah, I didn't realize that it it was that easy to be able to put on, because I mean, that's like you said, that's if that's 55% of it, then that's really good, honestly. Um,
Yeah.
and I like that because I think there's that to me when you talk about it, I feel like that's kind of a benefit. Like that's a better benefit because if I've got a 21 footer, I've got a 23 footer, and obviously with the prices of new boats, I'm not going to go out and spend, all this money, but for $4,500 and something that I could probably do in a weekend, or like, obviously, like you said, you want the dealers to be able to put it on, but being user friendly to where I can spend, let's say I spend 5 grand and increase 70% performance in my boat. Like, what's fuel economy do? I mean, it has to increase the fuel economy pretty astronomically too, or does it? How's that relate there?
So, we haven't put a lot of time into, measuring and, marketing the benefit in terms of fuel. I start with kind of the honesty of it. Anything on the back, right, that is dipping down is creating
Yep.
drag and resistance. But, if you take a traditional system and you need the bow to run down, you have to put that in the water and create that drag the entire journey. Right. For us, we're putting it in milliseconds. But the other part, because we're reducing the pitch, roll, and yaw, you get less pounding, which means less
Hmm.
resistance. And, we try to take a very honest kind of approach when we look at fuel burn and do it. And in our testing, we see equal, if not better, fuel at the given speeds for that 70% benefit in performance.
Hmm.
So it's something we'll put more time to make sure that we are messaging that part of it. But yeah, traditional systems, you are creating drag, constant drag that does have a negative impact on fuel. But because of ours, we see again often no impact at all, if not improvement from the reducing of the pounding and the resistance that comes with it.
Right. Yeah. That's something that people, I've always kind of been on the other side of that conversation where, like, a lot of people, I'm looking at it the way you just described it, where I know I've seen some brands say, oh, you can increase your fuel economy by using this thing. It's kind of like, well, you're creating drag. Like, drag means you're slowing the boat down, so to continue
Yep.
performing you have to increase your engine rpm, increase your speed, like you're burning more fuel. So like, but when I'm thinking about the ride system, I'm glad that you said you guys don't have those numbers on point just yet, but like, I would feel like it would increase it because you kind of are. You're reacting to it, so you're almost you're adding drag, but you're also minimizing drag because think about when the boat comes over and hits a wave. Instant,
Yeah,
like you're removing a lot of the pounding, and that pounding, the engines have to continue to power through that pound. So um, I would I would think it would increase it, but obviously that's
it's the feedback we get. I mean, we were so laser focused on making sure we market to the world what is the most differentiated part of our product and is the only underway stabilization device that reduces 70% of the roll pitch
mm,
yaw, right? And it does it automatically. You just turn the key and it does it. Like that is the most important part of our system. And we've put our efforts there. But the feedback we get, you look on the forums or people that reach back out and want to give us reviews, they talk a lot about the fuel savings they've seen with the system.
yeah.
So again, the active feedback we get is that it's better. Yeah,
Yeah, I would think that it would. What we talked about the power consumption on the gyro. What about the power consumption um on the ride? How is it minimal? Is it, decent?
it's minimal. It's 7 to 10. I mean, it's the rotary dipper style and the device that we created. Yeah, the power is minimal, and you also are using it while the boat's underway. You have the alternator output, but I mean, far less than even a standard radio. Of course, right? You put a radio and amps and all this other
Yeah.
stuff, you can get quite a lot of power consumption out. But I'm talking like standard out of the box head unit. Our product requires far less power than just that.
Wow. Yeah. And then you think about people using 1K, 3K transducers, there's and the amps and all that stuff. So I mean the boats have become power hungry. So that's good that that's less and like you said, it's not being used. So like when you get to where you're going, you're not using it anymore. So when you turn the engine off, it's not there's no draw. It's only drawing when your engine is producing power. So that's good to know. So I guess just to kind of wrap it up, it's just straight benefits all the way around between having the gyro or the ride. Um, like you said earlier, a lot of people leave boating because of either they getting sick or they're getting older. I mean, I think a lot of people also miss out on whenever you start boating, you don't realize how 30 years of boating will do on your back and on your knees and on your body in general. And like I know a lot of people that still love to go fishing, but they're like, I used to be able to go fish 4 days in a row, but now I'm like a 1-2 day kind of guy now because my knees can't take it.
Yeah, we always have arguments around the office of what product provides more benefit, right? And they're both wow, and it depends what bothers you most. But I think myself, because probably being around boating, but also the amount of testing we do in extreme conditions with our products off to understand boat motion, my back just can't take it much anymore. And the ride product just reducing that pitch and pound, it's an absolute game changer for
Hmm.
me. And I say I kind of put more emphasis on the ride product here, of course, because it's new. I think, right, the gyro, as we said, it's the air conditioning cars now, right? You don't go and ask, you just expect it. People have been on it. Once you have it, you're never boating again without it. That's known, and you see that. The ride is new, and in my experience of being on with the end users and demos, it's the best part of my job. Unfortunately, I don't get to do it as much as I'd like, but they hit the button, it's wow, and they buy the product.
Yeah.
And our challenge right now is getting more people on the boats to experience it. And say to anyone out there, right, don't think you understand what it does because you understand what trim tabs could do or you understand what they could do if you moved them, automatically. It's no, it's the exact wow feeling that you hit the button on the gyro and it just stops. It's that transformational when you hit the ride product. And get on a boat. There's enough OEMs of new boats there offering it. You should be able to get a demo or
Mhm.
reach out to us, and we'd love to get you on.
Yeah, I think that's really good. I think once people get on it, they'll use it. But well, Andrew, this has been great. I really appreciate you coming on there and taking the time to speak with us. I'm sure there's going to be a bunch of people that really like this. So appreciate you coming on the show and thank you.
Awesome. Next time, let's do it on a boat.
Yeah, for sure. Hey there, sorry to take you away from the video, but real quick, did you know that on average a boat owner will spend between $1,000 and $5,000 a year just on servicing their engine? And you could actually pocket and save a lot of that money if you would just do the service yourself. It might seem like a daunting task, but I guarantee you virtually everyone can do it with our guidance and the Boaters program. This is just one skill that you could learn inside the program because we have hundreds of other videos teaching you all kinds of boating skills, as well as a weekly live stream where we have questions and answers with me, as well as a chat feature where you can send videos and pictures, ask all kinds of questions, or look for some advice or some guidance on a project that you're doing on your boat. You can join the program by hitting the first link in the description, clicking join, or visiting bornagainboating.com. Now back to the video.